I've been a VS Code user pretty much since I started to learn how to program. Technically, I started in the Atom code editor, and then I learned Sublime Text for a little bit, but that was just kind of basic HTML, CSS changes for the projects that I was working on at the time. So I think the first real editor that I picked up was VS Code. And I'm a fan of all of the different forks and flavors of VS Code that have come about over the last couple of years. And in fact, my most watched YouTube video on this channel is me talking about how I set up my VS Code. But over the last month, I've been exclusively using, other than a few things here or there, exclusively using the Zed code editor. So here's what I like and a couple things that I don't like about it, and why I might keep using Zed in the long run. For those of you who don't know what Zed is, it's a different code editor. It is not VS Code. It's built entirely on Rust, so it feels fast. That's the biggest thing, the biggest plus that made me want to try out Zed. Was the first time I downloaded it, the first time I opened it, it just felt like I was back in something like Sublime Text again. I just felt like I was speeding through everything that I had to do. It didn't feel like VS Code in that sense, and it looked beautiful. I mean, just look at this website itself. I think everything that Zed does and how they build things, and the UX and UI design around everything, it looks clean, and it's definitely appeals to my aesthetic. But there's a lot of things that, it's a new code editor. So you don't have all of the aspects that you might have come to expect if you're using something like VS Code or PHP Storm or whatever have you for your particular code editor of choice. Zed is new, and so there's not going to be those extensions. There's not going to be even those themes or different ways of doing things within the editor. It's all brand new. And the first time I tried it, there was a little bit to be desired, but the last month has actually been really nice. And so here's how I set it up. Here's what it looks like for me, and some of the tips and tricks I've learned in how to set it up, with the things that I really like, I'm looking forward to, and the things I don't like. But overall, the things that I have just come to enjoy about Zed, more than just the UI. That's definitely what got me in the door. But I think it's a really good code editor. All right, so here is my setup. I change themes every day or two, so I try not to have like the same exact theme every now and then. But right now, what I'm using for themes is the Capuchin Espresso, the blur theme, which has been really wonderful. It's basically gives that nice background effect where it looks like I have a little bit of opacity in my editor. Now, the first couple of things I liked and that I had to make sure I set up was I like that Zed kind of gives you the option of just using whatever you want when it comes to basically things that are built in. What do I mean by that? Well, Zed does have its own agentic line by line kind of like Copilot, but you can also use Copilot or Super Maven, and that's actually what I have set up here. Is I have it set to the edit prediction provider as Super Maven, just because I've always found that that's been the fastest and also the most predictable for me. Another thing is for language servers for PHP, out of the box, Zed has PHP Actor as well as IntelliFence. I've actually gone back and forth on which one I actually prefer, at least within Zed. Within VS Code, I use strictly IntelliFence, but PHP Actor has been really nice. It gives me a little bit more type safety for the things I want. Now, there's a couple of things that I liked to set up outside of it's nice that all of my key bindings are set in this one key bindings panel. So if I go into the Keymap right here, there's just a couple of ones that I set up. Mostly I wanted to switch the sidebar to the right, just like in my VS Code. But I wanted to have like the same kind of bindings. And while Zed does a great job of saying, hey, do you want to use VS Code bindings? There's a couple of things I had already set up, mostly in order to open the sidebar. I think this is out of the default box for VS Code, but I can't remember nowadays, is I do Command K and then B, and that opens up the sidebar. And so that's why I kind of set here is Command KB workspace toggle right dock. And so Zed has all these little options that say, okay, within the workspace or within a project panel or agent, you have the ability to have these different items that you want to do within that specific key binding. So that's what I did with Command KB. And same thing with if I'm using the agentic editor, and we'll get to that a little bit of how I think Zed's AI is actually really top notch. I've been enjoying it probably even more so than Cursor nowadays, although it's relatively new and there are some faults in some ways, shape, or form. But the key bindings and setting them up was rather easy. Again, a lot of the things I really like about Zed is out of the box, it just works great. Of course, I did change a lot of these items to make sure it looks and works for my particular use case. But just right out of the box, how it looks, how it performs, how it feels, I would be fine with. Again, the few things that I did change was I removed a couple of things. I can't remember exactly what I did in terms of removing things. But basically, you can set the panel to either dock left or dock right. And that's, oops, did I just mess it all up? Let's see. Dock right. There we go. And that's the biggest one that I changed, mostly because I prefer the panel on the right side of things. Next, a lot of people are going to say, okay, but the Laravel options are not that great compared to VS Code. And yes, that is correct. And here is where I actually think this is what has gotten me to use Zed more effectively in the last month since I've been using it, because I think Zed allows me to not think about the AI writing my code as much. Zed has kind of given me the option to just write and just code without having a little bit of that barrier. And of course, like I said, I'll get into how Zed is using AI, and I think really well. But it feels a little less bogged down in my mind. It feels like I'm more in touch with my code, if you want to say it that way. And it's really one of the reasons why I've loved writing code in Zed, because it feels minimal. It feels clean. It doesn't feel like I'm controlling my editor or my editor is controlling me and how I code. It's more just me coding. And I've rather quite enjoyed it. Now, the things that I really appreciate about how Zed works are also the things that, make it difficult. Like I said, you can't just port your VS Code extensions. You kind of have to wait for someone to build them or try to build them yourself. And while I haven't gotten that deep into Rust to build it myself, there is a Blade extension. So if we go into the Zed extensions, it's fully featured in the sense that there are extensions, there are themes, there are language servers and MCP servers, and we'll get to that in a bit. But really, the Blade extension is the one that I'm most using, I guess, is the one that you think that you actually do need, because it provides the language support. But I'm not actually using it. I did for a little bit, but I switched how I'm using or how I'm formatting things within Zed, because pretty much almost every new project that I create, there's a couple of things that I do. If I go into this app.blade.php, again, this is mostly if I'm using something like Blade or Livewire. If I'm using something like Inertia with React or Vue, then Zed is fantastic, because the PHP support with PHP Actor or IntelliFence has been wonderful. And then like anything TypeScript, anything React flavored or even Svelte flavored is just out of the box, works great. But Blade, that's a little trickier one. And so I use Livewire, and I use Livewire Volt, so single file components. And so I set up Prettier Blade. And so in every single project that I have, and I think you can do this globally. I actually haven't done that. Every single project I have, I do a Prettier file, which basically just says I'm going to use the Prettier plugin Blade and Prettier plugin Tailwind CSS. And I'll link a blog post in the description on Matt Stauffer and Jason Beggs, who kind of talk about how to set up Prettier plugin Blade, which works fantastic. But I also like within my VS Code setup in my Livewire to be able to have PHP help. to be able to say, okay, if in this check-in function, I want to say auth. And I have that because I can pull in that auth facade and
go into the user and say, whatever I want to say within that auth user.
And that's because I'm setting this as a PHP extension. So my app.blade.php is actually PHP. And so PHP actor, which I'm using right now, actually reads this PHP file, but I still get syntax highlighting for Blade, mostly because it's just PHP. That's the tricky part. I don't get the neat syntax highlighting for like if statements and stuff like that. So you win some, you lose some. But basically, I just get formatting, like simple formatting. Like if I was to do, let's say that save, and it resolves it. Save and it resolves it, because what's happening is on save, I'm running npx Prettier to save those files. And Prettier is fantastic anyway, so I might as well just be using it. And I use Rector to do any kind of PHP formatting. And so this is not specific to Zed, but I've been using Rector to say, okay, not only do I want Pint to format things, but then I want Rector to tell me what's being formatted. And so basically between all those three things, Prettier with PHP actor, and then Pint and Rector, I have a setup that Zed just works around. It gives me all the details, all the nitty gritty flavoring and kind of functionality that I want for most of my projects, but without having to set it all up myself. Real quick, while I was editing, I realized that I wasn't talking too much about what unique features Zed also has that I just don't use. And so there are things that you want to check out on the Zed website that might be useful for you, like multiplayer type mode, where you kind of have the ability to work as a team, or even like the Git panel, things that I don't regularly use, so I just don't think about them too much. But I know that a lot of people really like those particular features as well. And I think that's really about it until the AI stuff. But that's the biggest thing that I had to kind of switch and play around with, was setting up how I want to format Blade files. Because if I'm not working in Inertia or React or something like that, then yeah, Blade is tricky to get working because it is its own templating language. And while that Blade plugin works well, writing Livewire in it, you choose one or the other. Do you want PHP stuff within a Blade file, or do you want Blade syntax and not any PHP? So for example, if I was to change this app.blade.php into Blade and save that again, I should still get the Prettier stuff. Yeah, but now I should also get like the @if. Yeah, see, I have that syntax highlighting there as well. And so that's just a very small thing in my mind. I would rather have the PHP in IntelliSense to be able to have, when I'm writing out specific, imports and facade and everything like that. Okay. Lastly, AI within Zed. I use Cursor a lot. I use Windsurf a lot, mostly Cursor probably. And then within VSCode, I mostly use a lot of the quick edits or just inline editing within Copilot. And so yes, Cursor or Zed does give me Super Maven. That's that inline assistant that I set up as well. But Zed also has the ability to do highlighted edits, like if I'm selecting something and editing something, as well as the agentic response. This is something that relatively came out new. I think in the last week or so, I think I got earlier access because I had been using Zed for a little bit. But I set it up to do my Command I, and now I have my agent over here in the right. And so the neat thing that I like about this agent response is you have the ability to, one, follow the agent, to see where it's actually making changes. But then you can have the ability to either write, ask, or minimal. So chat about anything with no tools. And so here's where I think Zed has kind of gotten me used to MCPs, being able to have the ability to interact with something like Laravel's documentation through, if we go into we'll just do this through the MCP servers. I actually have context 7 MCP server set up, which enables you to have Laravel's documentation. So if I was to pull this up, we'll go to context7.com. It has Laravel's documentation already updated in the last 3 days with 372,000.1 tokens and 4,000 snippets. And because Context 7 is an MCP server, anything that I ask about Laravel within my Zed agent is then going to be using that MCP server, especially if I use the write mode. Now, max mode, I don't necessarily know. This tool enables models to use large context windows, a limited tool calls, and other capabilities. So they do have a paid version. I believe I'm on the paid version right now. I think it's $20 a month, but you do get free, I think, a limited amount of free tokens that you're able to suggest. Now, there's a couple of things that I really like about it and things that obviously it's still new and it's getting better. One, you can use whatever model you want, even Olama. So if you want to do this locally, which I have Olama set up to be able to run Llama 3.2 locally, you don't have to pay for anything. Technically, you could just run this agentic experience with something like Olama. But so Zed has its own special recommended ones, but then you can also have, O3 Mini. There's probably other LLM providers that you can set up as well. I haven't looked into this too much, but you can use API keys and tokens across that. But the thing that I really like about it is, one, that follow mode is really nice. And then two, let's go ahead and just run something and I'll kind of show you this. Let's say, let's add a new migration to create a to-do model and then link those to-dos to the user in the user model. There's a few things that I really prefer about the agentic experience, and I'll kind of push this over into the left side so you can kind of see. Right up here, you can see how many tokens have been used and then how much you have in that whole context window. This is just a very small thing that I really enjoy. I can see, okay, I've used this much tokens within this particular chat, and we've all been there where we kind of talked back and forth and changed things, and it messes things up, and it changes some things, it doesn't change other things. And all of a sudden you ran out of context and you just have to start something fresh and you have to basically redo everything. Well, now I've been finding myself splitting my agentic experience up and not continuing as much, mostly because I know how far along in that context window I am. The few things that are not as good when it comes to at least the AI portion, basically there's two things that I wish could be better. We'll say three things, mostly because I think it'd be awesome to have updated Laravel stuff. But I also know that also comes with, maybe I should just make them for Zed itself. But one is the AI features. I think it's incredibly fast. I think it works really well. The neat thing is you still have the ability to keep all to go one by one versus where it's going. So it looks like here we had, so if I was to click keep for this particular file, so it created a to-do factory for me, it should automatically, sometimes it jumps you to the next. So yeah, it looks like I can review changes here. It will jump you to those particular files that it changed, for example. So we have that to do app models. That looks good. So yeah, it belongs to the user model.
and I just said keep all. And so we have this kind of like review page that it automatically creates, or I could just go into that to-do factory and see what has been done. But it also, it tells me to run that migration command. So if you are used to, Cursor and having the ability to say, hey, run these commands for me, Zed doesn't have that experience just yet, but I prefer it that way, to be fair. Two things. I wonder if I can try to figure this out, or try to do this on the fly as well. Usually it's only within app.blade files or any kind of templating file. Let's say profile is going to be called like user profile now. Let's say in the app.blade, that's the right one, .php file, let's change the profile name to be user profile. Now, the thing that I'm going to try to see if it does it for me, and of course it's probably not going to do that. It's already set to user profile. Change it to just profile. So let's see if it changes it. Here's where I ran into some issue. So yeah, it's going to change it to profile. That's great. We're going to keep it. And then if I was to change this back to user profile, save this, and then say, also change log out to can, or do you want to log out as the text. I've found that if I make a change manually to something that it already created, sometimes it reverts that change to what it just changed, if that makes sense. Because I don't know if it's saying, oh, like I already made this change, and so now I'm going to maybe you didn't mean to delete it or to revert that change manually because you did say to keep it. I don't know where that process is, and of course it's not going to do it for me right now. Yeah, so it kept it this time for me, but mostly I found that within non-Laravel stuff. So I was working in an Astro project, and then in a Next.js project, it kind of kept the changes. So like it would do a bunch of changes. I would change some CSS manually, and then when I asked it to, hey, let's do this next portion, it would revert everything that I just changed because it was like, hey, you probably didn't mean to do this. I don't know. So that was just one little small thing. Another little small thing, I don't think it happened in Blade as much, but there's like some weird kind of autocomplete errors where like if I was to go into div and have that, but then change this to like a p tag, like every now and then it would duplicate this. I'll try to link the where it happened to me actually in a video for the official Laravel channel, because that was where I noticed it happening the most, where it was like, oh hey, I was trying to change it to a div or try to change that component, but instead it like duplicated that component where I would say like prop component, and then it would, if I had p here, it would change it to like prop and add it to the p, and then it would just be all messed up. Again, super small things, but the cool thing is some of these are probably already fixed, because down here, I'm surprised it didn't happen during this video, but I swear it says click to restart Zed to get updates probably like every 10 minutes. It's crazy how fast they're updating this and making changes and just making Zed better. And that's really one of the main reasons why I'm bullish on Zed. Not just because I think their agentic experience is the most focused on how can you build things and how can you actually take control of your code and not have to think too much about, okay, just do this for me. It's more of like I want to follow along and make sure we're doing this together. Or even if you wanted to kind of take apart that, of course, I have this set to Command K where I could do that inline edits as well. That transform is what I believe Zed calls it. But really, the one reason I like Zed is because the AI isn't in my face, unless I want it. Like it doesn't feel like it's there until I actually pull it up. And of course, the agentic experience, this sidebar here, is relatively new. And within the past couple of weeks, it's been released to the public. But it doesn't feel like that's the main reason I use Zed. The main reason I use Cursor is for that experience. So yeah, it's definitely something that has been growing on me, that I've been learning to love more, and more importantly, it just has been making me love writing code again, and not just to start a new project, but also like working in existing projects as well. It just feels nice to be in something different for a change. And so whether I'm going to be continuing to use Zed in the future, one thing is it might actually force me to learn Vim motions better, because it kind of has Vim motions out of the box with Zed, or at least a really good implementation of Vim. And a lot of people who I know love Vim and NeoVim say that Zed is one of their favorite editors because of that. But I just like how fast, clean, minimal, and smooth the experience feels to code within Zed. So I've been using it for a month, but I'm probably going to be continuing using it to build, to write things, to create things. And so hopefully, if you like Zed, check it out. If you don't, and you're just going to keep using whatever editor you're using, we'll keep building and keep creating.